It's almost Kentucky Derby time again. Best way to play the Kentucky Derby every year is to play through NYRA Bets. Bet any track, anywhere, anytime. You know the drill. Free $25 Derby bet along with a $200 sign-up bonus. Use the promo code Derby25. Derby 151 is lining up. I can hardly wait for Derby 200. It's only a mere 49 years away. And we'll start with the favorite, and that favorite is Journalism. And we'll talk about Journalism beating Baeza and Citizen Bull bombing in the race. As you saw, Journalism had a little bit of trouble steadying behind horses. It did not affect him. Now, Baeza ran extremely well here after breaking his maiden, and he should have gotten the points to get in the Derby. A bad decision by Churchill Downs. The way they put the points this year keeps him out of the race. Now, he isn't also eligible, and if he gets in, he would be one of my top four choices, but I'm not putting a top four choice of it also eligible in there that very well may not get into the race, and as of now, he has not gotten in. But Journalism, I don't know what the knock on Journalism is. He has been faster than these horses consistently. He overcame some trouble and was still able to get it done last time. He beat a very good Baeza and put away Citizen Bull. A number of things happened in here. It confirmed that Journalism is very much the one to beat in this race. And even if you're somebody that somehow thinks this pace isn't going to be that hot, Journalism isn't compromised. I think if you look at this Derby, you're supposed to separate them into groups. Speeds, deep closers, and the horses in the middle. And I think the horses in the middle are the ones that are the safest bets. Deep closers can do well in the Derby when there's an absolute meltdown, and maybe there will be. But I think the horses that are in the middle somewhere are the ones that won't be compromised if the pace doesn't get super hot, if they can still make their closing kicks, which clearly Journalism can. And I think they have a real advantage on the deep closers, and we'll get into more of them, who become much more pace dependent. As far as Citizen Bull, he showed in that race exactly who he is. A horse that can only be competitive when he's able to control in moderate paces, as he did in the Breeders' Cup, as he did in the Robert Lewis. He's not good enough to beat these horses. He's not fast enough to make the lead. And I think Citizen Bull is up against it a great deal, but Journalism very much the one to beat. Let's go to Sovereignty, who may well be the second choice here, finishing second at Gulfstream. Tapestry, unfortunately injured, not able to run. The third place finisher, a speed horse, not good enough to win this race. I respect Sovereignty, and I don't mind that he finished second here. I don't love that the winner, Tapan Street, was considerably better than him. He was trying to follow that one. But I think you could argue a little bit that Sovereignty was ridden a little bit to be closer to the pace in here. He had a 3-wide trip, 4 wide the whole way. And in a race like the Derby, which figures to feature a stronger pace, he can sit back and make that run. He should have no problem with distance, and he's clearly talented and trained by a great trainer in Bill Mott. But is he really good enough to be the second choice? Has he really run fast enough figures to make him the second choice? To me, he hasn't shown he's close to as good as Journalism, and while I respect him and think he's far from impossible, I've looked in other ways in here, and I just think Sovereignty's one is the second or third choice that I think might be a little bit of an underlay. Now, a horse who's going to take money in here, Sandman, is one that will not be on my tickets, as well as Publisher and Coal Battle, the 1, 2, 3 finishers in the Arkansas Derby. This is a race that featured as fast a pace as you will really ever see, especially in a Kentucky Derby prep. And Coal Battle may have moved a little soon, but he struggled to get by Cornucopian, who didn't even win a 3-horse field at 1-9 or 1-5 here the other day. As far as Sandman, we saw how good Sandman can be when he gets that big pace to run at. And he ran a 99 Beyer, which puts him in hunting distance. But to me, he's the kind of horse that needs an absolute pace setup. He's a bit of a goofy runner. I think there are better closers in here and better sort of middle ground type horses. I don't like Sandman. I don't like Publisher. I don't want to bet on horses, particularly one that could be the second or third choice, that were the beneficiaries of an absolute meltdown in an extremely fast-paced race, as the Arkansas Derby was. Let's turn our attention to the Bluegrass. I think East Avenue showed that he's capable of running his very good race when he can control on the front end. They better be aggressive with him in here, because if they think he's going to rate and run his best race, I believe they're delusional. The problem is there's a lot of other speed. And even so in this race, and he dead set an honest pace, he couldn't hold on and beat Burnham Square. And while sentimentally I'd love to see Burnham Square do well for Ian Wilkes, I don't know that he's really good enough. And you talk about a race in the Bluegrass where almost the entire field was just a few lengths apart. And also the third place finisher, River Thames, who I think is a bit distance challenged as well as not quite talented enough, was right there at the finish. Probably not the strongest race. And if I thought East Avenue could clear the lead, I might think he was dangerous. I doubt that happens, and I think he's a horse that needs the lead to do his best running. Burnham Square, I think he's an interesting closer, but he's one of those horses that falls in the category of deep closer, and I prefer horses that can make their own position in this race. One of them, of course, being the favorite, Journalism. Let's take a look at the Wood Memorial, a race that the 1-2 finishers are both extremely talented. Now, if somebody wanted to tell me that a horse wired this field, I would say it was Rodriguez, because I believe of the speeds, he's the most talented horse. And Mike Smith is a take-no-prisoners rider that sends Speed Horse the lead. So I could see him making the lead at all costs. I just wonder if that might be too much of a cost for him. And he absolutely has shown that he is a Jekyll and Hyde horse. He runs very well in the front end and lousy when he doesn't make the lead. So while I'm not picking Rodriguez, I'd love to see the Wood winner win the Derby. And I also think that he's the best of the speeds. I'm just afraid the pace is going to be too hot. Which brings us to Grande, who I think is a major player in here. He showed how good he was in Wood Memorial. A wide trip, didn't get off that well. Chasing outside, a big wide middle move, and he kept on running. That's the kind of race I would normally love going to the Derby, and he is definitely one of my top 4 picks in this race. Having said that, I worry a little bit that he has only the 3 races. He doesn't have as much bottom as some of the others, and I wonder how reliable he is to run back to that race in the Wood. But I do think he's dangerous, and I do think he's very, very talented. Let's go back to another race that kind of collapsed, but I think an important race for this Kentucky Derby, and that's the Louisiana Derby at Fairgrounds. Tistastic, he finally got his trip. He got the pace, he got the ride, and he got the job done. However, Joel Rosario was very patient, as we know Joel can be, and being so patient, he basically took advantage of a race that was falling apart. And in a lot of ways, I compare his race to that of a horse like Sandman, only a little bit slower. The horse that I want out of this race is Chunk of Gold. Chunk of Gold, I don't blame Jared Loveberry. I think he did the right thing trying to be closer to the pace, but as it turned out, it wasn't the right thing. He'd been better off sitting 4 or 5 lengths back and moving with Tistastic, and I think he might have won. He kind of moved too soon. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of another horse that Loveberry rode, Two Phils, when he ran the Risen Star, and we all know how well Two Phils ran the Kentucky Derby. He ran a winning race despite finishing second. Chunk of Gold is a long shot in this race, but more importantly, he's not a deep closer. I don't think he'll be nearly as close as he was in Louisiana Derby. I see him more in that middle ground somewhere. And to me, if you think Tistastic is interesting, Chunk of Gold's going to be a much bigger price, and I believe he's the better one in the race, and I think he is a real player in this Kentucky Derby. Now we'll go to a race that I don't think is going to give us any players in the Kentucky Derby, and that's the Jeff Ruby Stakes, a race that, in my opinion, should not be awarding 100 points to the winner and getting the second-place finisher into the Kentucky Derby. Final Gambit, he obviously turned his career around, improving dramatically, but this was a race that completely melted down. And when you look at the second-place finisher and here, Flying Mohawk, I think it shows you the overall talents of this field, but more importantly, these are turf-type horses that did well in synthetic. And Final Gambit has strictly turf pedigree. Now, there are halves that did well in the dirt, so it's not impossible that this horse could handle the dirt. But under the best of circumstances, on a different surface, he didn't run a race that's nearly good enough to win. They're big prices. They won't be on my tickets. A horse who you know is going to be forward is American Promise in the newly created Dirt Virginia Derby, a race that got 50 points in its first running on the dirt in the middle of March. American Promise is a cool horse. He's run better than it looks in some of his races, but he is a horse that absolutely needs to be forward to run his best races. And I don't know when Wayne Lucas stopped sending Speed Horse the lead, so I expect him to be prominent and part of the pace. And while I think he's kind of a cool horse, I simply do not think that he's good enough to win this race, but I do think that he's a horse that can potentially make the pace faster. Let's talk about the Japanese horses, and we'll start with the better one, and that's Luxer Cafe. And we'll show him winning easily last time in the race whose name I'm just not going to even try to pronounce. He stalked wide in this race. He has good stalking speed. He's another horse that can put himself somewhere in the middle, and this was an extremely visually impressive race. If you're an eye test guy, and I'm not, this is one. But this was a fast race. I thought he was good in here and extremely impressive. Now, he only beat NYRA Daytona, the winner of the UA Derby, by a few lengths in the prior race, but I still think he ran much better than that one that day. NYRA Daytona didn't break that sharply, but it doesn't really matter. He was just clunking along, finishing fourth that day. Luxer Cafe is a dangerous runner coming in from Japan. We saw how good Forever Young was. Now, I don't know if he's as good as that one, but I do think he's pretty talented, and he's going to be in the mix somewhere for me. But NYRA Daytona is not going to be. And I would say for both of these horses, I worry they're shipping a long, long way coming here just about 4 or 5 weeks after that last race. Now, this was 4 weeks ago. Luxor Cafes was 5 weeks ago. NYRA Daytona was game on the inside and getting it done. But do you really want a horse that runs his best race on the front end in a race like this where the pace is going to be hot? And I don't believe that this UA Derby was good enough. And over time, the UA Derby, except for last year, has not been a race that has proven to be very productive for the Kentucky Derby. Luxor Cafe is the better of these two horses that race in Japan, and I think he's the one that has a chance to get a piece, not NYRA Daytona. So after all that, where am I going? I'm going to the favorite in here, Journalism. I think he's going to end up being 5-2 or 3-1, and that is a very fair price on a horse that has proven to be better than these horses. He has the right tactical running style, and I believe is very much the one to beat. Chunk of Gold is my interesting long shot. I didn't want to put him on top, but I put him second. Luxor Cafe is third, and Grande is fourth. They're sort of interchangeable, third and fourth. But keep in mind, if Baeza should get in, I think he's a player in this race as well. It's going to be a fun Kentucky Derby. It always is. The best way to play it is to play it through NYRA Bets. Head on over to NYRABets.com. Use the promo code Derby25, free Derby 25, $25 bet on the Derby, as well as the $200 sign-up bonus. Good luck in this year's Kentucky Derby.